Okay, I believe I am live. All right, I know I'm like 5, 6 minutes late getting started. However, we had a couple of little technical difficulties, but that is not stopping us from having this conversation tonight. That just means it's about to go down, literally. And so I want to welcome you to tonight's Flow and Flourish. I am your host, the capacity coach, Nicole Roan, and I help women to really create balance between their personal and their professional lives by helping them to understand and manage their capacity. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight with my girl, Samantha Washington, is about people pleasing. Because to me, people pleasing is a choice. I know that may seem kind of harsh, but it's the truth. People pleasing really is a choice. And when you know better, you do better. So I want to talk a little bit about really what people pleasing is, because I know that that term is tossed around frequently. I also want to talk about what some of the signs are, take your questions, all of that. So I want this to be interactive. Let's get into this conversation. And I am going to go ahead and bring Miss Samantha to the screen. Sam, can you see me, love?
Yes, I can see you. I can hear.
Hi.
Hey, girl. Hey.
And you can see me moving now, right? Because you couldn't see me before.
Yes. How are you?
I am wonderful. It's Friday. I'm good. I'm real good
Friday, Sunday.
in my Aaliyah voice, right? Oh, thank you for joining me tonight. I have not officially introduced you other than giving your name, so I would love for you to just go ahead, tell us who you are, a little bit about what you do, give us, a little snippet of your story, and then folks, as you're coming in, say hi, tell us where you're from, drop questions, all of that good stuff. Sam, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Yeah. So, Lord. First of all, I just want to with um low key flex. I'm in Hawaii right now, so
Can we say jelly? Jelly?
oh my gosh, if you hear things slamming, it's the trail winds coming in because AC is not a thing really out here. So the wind is blowing through, and the door is probably going to shut open on its own. So I'll just preface it with that. But thank you, Nicole, for having me here. My name is Samantha Washington. I am the owner of Mended Fitness. Um, I help survivors of narcissistic abuse stop people pleasing, for one, build their confidence muscle so they can be the best version of themselves and fulfill their God's given purpose. And I do that through coaching. Um, Part of my story um, comes from my upbringing. I grew up with narcissistic personalities in my environment, and my caregivers were the ones who really made me feel like my voice didn't matter. And I did a lot of, I'd say, parent pleasing, where I did what I was told, whether I liked it or not, whether I was comfortable with it or not. And it really affected me growing up. I turned from, you know, not really feeling like I had a say in anything, being verbally, emotionally, and physically abused, um, and just not feeling like I had an identity and walked in that as an adult and started people pleasing as an adult, doing the same thing, allowing myself to be in relationships where I was people pleasing and not feeling like I was valued, had a voice, and also in working environments where I, had a narcissistic boss who pretty much tried to control everything and made me feel like my work was never enough. My my abilities, like my uniqueness wasn't enough. How I brought things, to a meeting, not speaking up, or when I did try to speak up, it wasn't enough. I was shut down or made fun of. And so those things really brought me to a place of just like, I was just down. I didn't know who I was. I was too busy doing everything for everybody else. And it wasn't until I realized, when I was in my neighborhood, and it was the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd back in June, where I was I felt like I was being targeted with these microaggressions by my neighbors. I had I approached them and told them, hey, I feel like you guys are talking about me in a way that isn't true and calling me aggressive when I'm just really somebody that you've never really got to know. And when I brought that up, they kind of like were like, oh no, we were just kidding and blah blah blah. And it made me question again my voice, question my feelings, not feeling like, I was heard. And I started questioning, like confused, like why do I always feel like this? Every time things like this happen, I always feel like this. But why am I not confident in that feeling? Why do I not stand firm in that feeling? And it was because I realized I was seeking for everybody else to validate what I was feeling. I was looking for somebody to say, yes, you're right for feeling this way, versus just trusting that this feeling is real and that was enough. I didn't have to look to anybody else for it. So when I realized that, it got me thinking about my past and my growing, how I grew up, and so now I started my business this way, teaching people who are survivors of narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships how to stand up for themselves and speak up and be more confident, so they can set boundaries and cultivate the relationships they should have already had. That were meant for them. So, yeah.
Oh, you said a lot, ma'am. And I see we have a couple of people. I've said hi in the chat, but hey, Trisha. Hey, Gail. Anybody else that comes in, say hi so we know that you're here. Samantha, I wrote down so many things in that short amount of time.
And you had
So I know, right? That's the HR in me. Always taking notes. Gotta be taking notes. um, but so you have your notebook too. See, good. I'm in good company.
I got a book in here that I'm going to reference when we talk about this, because I be highlighting, girl, I should have been HR.
Listen, yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned parent pleasing. You mentioned narcissism. You mentioned how it impacted you at work. So I want to go back and tell us your definition of people pleasing, and then talk a little bit about what a narcissist is, like some of those signs, because I do believe that they go hand in hand, in a lot of situations, not each and every one, but can you do that?
Yes. Y'all might hear some noise in the background. Pretend y'all don't hear it. All right. So I will go first with the people pleasing. So people pleasing is pretty much when you try hard to make other people happy, to the point of taking your like where you don't value your values don't matter. So you don't matter. You're not concerned about you. You're just concerned about making the other person happy so they can like you. People pleasing is a form of manipulation. Now, people pleasing is not, I'm starting to understand more of how it's not a bad thing if the motives are right, right? People sometimes confuse kindness and niceness. And sometimes when people are trying to be nice, they're doing something, you know, to, and there's some type of personal gain from that thing. But when they're being kind, right, it's a natural thing. It's a part of your character. You embody kindness, you're loving, and all you're doing is extending that towards someone else, so there's nothing that you're expecting back, right? And so if you're a people pleaser, you're looking for, you're the type to agree with everybody. You are not good at accepting praise. You avoid conflict. You um, you take on other people's feelings. So if they're angry at you, you feel it. So you have like this empathetic um, personality. You don't speak up when you feel like you want to. So many things. You have a hard time saying no. So, and if you ever encounter a narcissist, because this is how, and I can't say really people pleasers, but yes, actually, I'm not gonna lie. People pleasers and narcissists, they
They gravitate towards each other, right?
yes, because a narcissist is pretty much somebody that can care nothing, that doesn't have empathy, doesn't care about other people, only cares about themselves. They're always looking for looking for people pleaser personalities to validate them, to so they can use, like, that's considered their supply, because
Mm-hmm.
people pleasers want to help all the time. They see
Mm-hmm.
personality as someone who is probably broken that needs help. So
Mm-hmm.
that validation from the narcissist. The narcissist is taking on the attention that they're getting. They need to get that attention from a people pleaser. So they create this codependent relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Being the helper, and then the other one is just taking all of it. And
The
because they're
giver
getting
and the taker, right?
and the taker, and they're getting all the attention. And that's how the best way I can sum it up to, watered down way. But narcissists, like I said, don't care about anyone else, and it's easy to come together with a people pleaser because people pleasers, the ones that are pleasing and putting themselves on the back burner, are pretty much doormats.
Mm. Ooh,
So
ouch. But it's the truth.
it's
You are a doormat when you're people
doormat,
pleasing.
just getting walked all over, and you're and because you're so reliant on somebody else's, you know, validation, you don't value yourself, you don't validate yourself, then you're always going to be chasing after somebody who can't even give it to you, right? But
Yeah.
but because you see them as someone that you can help, you don't see them as someone that's you don't see that they're a narcissist. You just see that they need help. Because most of the
Mm-hmm.
time bonding with them also. You come together with them because of you guys have some type of background where there's narcissistic personality in the parent. So
Mm-hmm.
pleasers probably have a narcissistic parent. And so the signs of a narcissist are not red flags, but blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, you're used to being talked down to, and all you're trying to do is be better for this
Mm-hmm.
do for this person that will never see you as someone valuable. They just
It's
see,
like nothing's good enough, right? Like nothing's ever good enough.
and they always want to control you. Narcissists want to control you. So if they want to control you, this is the way to make you feel like you're not enough so you can do more for them. So
Mm-hmm.
and you're just chasing your tail. Trying,
And as a people pleaser, that's like, ooh, right? Like you want to be liked, you want to be loved, you want these relationships. And
you
so you're doing all the things
doing
all the time.
you never have time for yourself. That's why find yourself, because you always with people pleasing, it's you take on the identity of somebody else. That's why some
Mm.
you're in a people pleasing relationship, either with a boss or intimate relationship, with a not with like an intimate parent, but like more intimate, like you know,
Like your significant other.
yeah, you tend to take on personality a little bit. After a while, you end up taking some of the things that they have posited into you, and you
Mm-hmm.
self and think, am I a narcissist because I think this way or do this way? But it's just all the pruning and all the you can't help the environment that you were in.
Yeah.
Mostly like, if this is the only way I'm going to get this, then I'm going to do this too.
Yep. If you can't beat them, join them. It's a classic, right? Like,
Yeah,
especially when you think about the people you spend the most time with, whether it's a sibling, a good friend, your significant other, your parents, your coworkers.
yeah.
Because you mentioned something about parent pleasing. And so I know that I too came from a household that, I wouldn't necessarily call it narcissistic, but there were some things that were going on, right? And so I learned at an early age how to people please and I think we do it unknowingly. So like say mom and dad argue, right? Like if you do something to make them laugh, maybe that is what's going to stop them from fighting. Or if you intervene, you try to make everything even. And it's the same with friendships, right? Like if you are in a friendship and your friend is upset or mad, you try to do something to cheer them up. And because of that reaction that you get, you see that it's helping or it's making things better. We tend to adapt those same kind of behaviors as we continue to grow up.
Yeah,
So in our work life, I know you mentioned when we had the podcast, when we recorded, I don't think that I told you, but I didn't even realize I was people pleasing at work until one of the things that you mentioned. Like, if you are the one who when a coworker or a manager, supervisor comes and says, "Hey, oh my gosh, I have so much stuff to do," before they can even finish what they're saying, you're like, "I'll take it. I got it." And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm really, I was still people pleasing at work because I did want that validation. I did want to be seen as someone that they could depend on. Never really tied it to any of the things that I experienced growing up, but ma'am, that's a whole ordeal.
Yeah. And yeah, that's true. It's so important to understand that you got to wait for the ask. You have to wait for the ask. When you're people pleasing, you, like I said before, you take on other people's problems as your own.
Yeah.
As you're the problem, your radar goes up. Fix it, fix it, fix it. Even though they didn't ask, maybe they're just venting to you, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you take responsibility, if you're dealing with somebody, a narcissistic boss, right? They're like, oh, I'm gonna always go to this person because I'm gonna get what I need.
Yep.
Ever have to ask because they're always gonna volunteer. And here you are staying late at work with all this stuff, coming in on the weekends with all this stuff, or now it's COVID, so
I mean, you can still people please at home and work late. Been there, done that.
doing this instead of being with your family, or maybe you wanted to work out, or maybe whatever. Can't do none of that. You're not taking care of yourself. You're doing all the things, and to think they never even asked you to do it. And sometimes people don't even realize this, but when you're people pleasing, there's another side of the waiting to ask, or if they tell you, I didn't want you to do this, and then you become,
Mm,
because you're like, I did all of this, but I never asked you to do it. I never asked you. Or when someone denies your help and you get upset because you're like, is something wrong with me? Am I, because they didn't want my help? When really they just don't want your help. They got it. But you want to be helpful to so bad because you need that validation. It fuels you that you don't see any other way.
yeah. It goes back to that validation in every single area. I love that you bring that up. And I know I used to get upset because I was the one who everybody called on. They still do, but I've put some boundaries up. I've learned how to say no in a complete sentence. So people know, don't, if I can't do it, I'm not going to say yes and overcommit, right?
Right.
But there was a point where people stopped asking me for stuff, and I did feel like something was wrong with me. I'm like, well, you normally would ask me, but why don't you? But really, I didn't even want to do what they were asking me to do anyway, or that they didn't ask me to do. So I was mad, number one, because I didn't want to do it, and number two, because they didn't even ask me. Like, how dare you not ask me? You know that's what I do.
At this point.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
I do see we have a question. So Gerardo wants to know, how do you distinguish between being a people pleaser and maintaining peace? And she added to that, or avoiding confusion.
So if you, because when you're, okay, so if you're people pleasing, remember, we're trying to make others happy, and we're sacrificing our own needs by doing that, right? To the point of sacrificing our own needs, to the point of taking our own, things that we value, not even considering it, right? So if you are wanting to still please people, but in a healthy way, you have to understand, what are you willing to do? What do you have the capacity for? And also ask yourself, why are you doing this? Before you say yes to something, ask yourself, why? Is it for someone to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that," is it, are you looking for the validation? Is it to get something out of it? Are you going to be upset if they never say thank you after? Or if they don't like the way that executed this thing, or whatever the case. Like, what is the motive for you saying yes? Why? And then if you know why, then you should not realize, okay, so I do want to do this because I think this would be beneficial for me and this person in my career, in our career, whatever. And then ask yourself also, do you have the capacity for it? Because you can, and it might be for you, it might work out where it's not a selfish motive, it's not a manipulation thing, it's not like you're looking for something afterwards. But then You're looking at your calendar like, I don't have room to do any of this. It's going to take this and this time, and I don't have room. So, for the sake of your peace, you're going to say no. And that's that. And you don't even have to explain yourself. People pleasers do feel like they have to explain themselves. I can't because, da, 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 and they have to do it in a way where it sounds justifiable to the asker. Is that a word? Yeah, I can think of this.
It is.
It has to be justifiable to the asker. You don't even have to explain it. You can if you want, but don't go over explaining to the point where they're like, ooh, next time I'm gonna ask like this. Don't give
Yeah.
in, so I think asking yourself why, and also seeing if you even have the capacity to do it mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that.
Yeah.
So, because that's a boundary you're setting. You want to make sure that you're available. Are you taking care of yourself? Is there any room here where have you taken care of yourself this week before you even say yes to this thing? All these things need to be considered before even foregoing any of the tasks, because again, if you're people pleasing, you always have something to do. You
Always.
probably go to bed. Before you even go to bed, you got like you're editing your to-do list or adding to it.
Don't you call me out on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was talking to you. But there you
No, like that's a really good point. And I like how you talked about both motive and capacity, because both of those do go hand in hand. If the things that you're doing are because you feel like you have to keep the peace, right? Like, I've learned that if me taking care of myself is going to disrupt the peace, I need to question that relationship.
yeah.
And I know that doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good, but it's like, okay, if me saying no is going to upset you, or it's going to, make the team mad at me, or whatever it is. So again, that motive, right? You should not be, and I know I say you shouldn't say should, but in this situation, I guess I would say I wouldn't recommend that you keep the company of anybody who is going to make you feel bad or make it unpeaceful for
Right.
you to be able to take care of yourself. And that means even little things like, say you need to take a nap because you're at home and you got the kids and so much is going on. If the people around you are like, girl, you don't need to take no nap. That's not what we do. Who is we? Right? Like, really understand them.
We are not in France. So what you mean we?
I need you to find we and get rid of we.
Right.
But questioning the relationships or the environment, the situation, because I know far too many times I have done away with my boundaries. I've done away with my no and all of that in the name of keeping the peace. But it was about the people pleasing. I was afraid to hurt their feelings. I was afraid that they would be upset. I was afraid that they wouldn't like me. And so a lot of that was tied to, again, the validation, the self-worth, the value. I found my value in really being able to help other people. And that's not, it don't work that way.
Absolutely. And
Goodness.
yeah, I think that, we do good work. We are good. Whatever people come to us for, that's what we're good at. And sometimes we don't realize how good we are because we're so busy trying to make other people validate it first. That brings me to a point. Um, One of the things that you can do people when you're people pleasing at work is have people always double check your work.
Okay, talk about that.
So, we're looking for that validation, right? We're looking to get that. Even though, and this is so interesting because people pleasers they don't want to, they don't like accepting praise, right? They're uncomfortable. It makes them uncomfortable because you're not used to hearing praise. If you grew up in a narcissistic, abusive, or toxic household, you didn't get praise often unless they wanted something out of you. They would give you all of the praise that looked really like, now you're doing too much praise. And you didn't know, you just took it. But they love bomb you. That's the term, right? So, You're not used to that praise, so you don't take it. But when you have somebody always looking at, you're always looking for feedback, looking for approval, looking for credit, all it's doing is diminishing the quality of the work. Because now you have all these eyes. You don't know, everybody has their own perception of things, and everybody looks at things differently. Now, the thing that you created came from you, right? You can, like they say, like if 5 people write an essay about this one topic, or let's say 5 people say this one phrase, it doesn't matter that they said this one phrase. What matters is how it came out of their mouth, because of the uniqueness. They are different. Each of those 5 people are different. So it sounds different coming out of their mouth. Now, when you're doing a presentation or whatever the case, typing up an email, if you always have to have somebody check over it, that means you don't even value the stuff that you're doing. And what's going to suck about that is somebody else will take the credit for what you're doing. Somebody else, you'll get overlooked because you're too busy, not feeling like you're always like if there's something that's coming up and there's a short deadline, you don't have time to go looking for somebody to come check it. So what are you going to do? Sabotage that opportunity. You're going to sabotage the opportunity because you don't see the value in you, pretty much. And it's so unfair. I mean, and to the smallest things, like I said before, checking an email. Does this email look right? Say what how many emails have you been sending? You've been working here for 5 years.
Listen, I relate to that so much because even as I hopped different levels within my career, and this goes into imposter syndrome too, which I know we both talk about, but I felt like I didn't belong there, or it was an accident that I'd gotten there. And so I was constantly having my directors or VPs like, hey, just take a look at this and make sure it's okay. Until one day, the SVP was like, I hired you for a reason, right? Like, I don't even have the time to check your emails. I trust you. You got this.
Right.
And so I want everybody listening and watching to know validation is for parking. Just like our girl Patrice tells us all the time. Yes, it feels good to be validated, but you don't need that. And if you do feel like you need that, that's a sign that you are a people pleaser. And so I would love, Sam, for you to talk about, what are some ways that we can combat people pleasing? If you know and listening into here tonight that you might be a people pleaser just based off the things that we've talked about, or if you've listened to the podcast episode, what are some things that people can do to kind of go the other way with people pleasing, to cut it out ASAP?
Yes. So one, we talked about, understanding, why are you doing these things? But I think about this. If you start to think about why you started doing it in the first place, it's you have to understand it came from a feeling of low self-importance, low self-esteem. And when you understand that, you know that it correlates with confidence and value. So I think about it as we need to build ourselves back up. We need to start trusting ourselves more. So for me, it's start looking at yourself and think about, what is it that brings you joy? What do you need to say to yourself? How do you need to affirm yourself? What lies have you told yourself? What has become your inner voice? What is your inner voice? What is your inner voice saying? It probably came from someone somewhere, right? That deposited this inner voice. And it's telling you you're not good enough. You're not this. Who do you think you are? Blah, blah, blah. And if it comes from a narcissist, it's most of the time it's because they're jealous of you. They see this power that you have in you, and they want to diminish it as much as possible because it's affecting their power, right? It's always somebody that wants to bring you down. And that's probably that inner voice that you have. It could be something else. But you need to start seeing it for what it is. Instead of letting it look rent-free in your head, you need to start writing that inner voice down. Whatever those things that you've said to yourself subconsciously for years and years and years, write it down. After you write it down, now you're going to write what the truth is next to it. You're going to cross out that lie and write what the truth is. What? And you know what the truth is. I am enough. I'm capable of sending an email without somebody looking at it. I am capable of, you know, speaking up in a, like, my ideas are amazing. Whatever you need to say to yourself to get you to that point. And yes, it's going to be awkward. Yes, it's going to be weird. Yes, it's going to be hard. You're probably going to cry. But I think it's important that you start creating a new story, a new narrative for yourself. Start creating a new path. So, because what we think is what we do. We are acting based on our thoughts, and you need to replace those thoughts. So you figure out what your inner voice is. You write down what the lie is. You replace it with the truth. You start affirming yourself. I like to use voice notes, and I also like to write. So the inner voice, where it's coming from, those are all awareness. That's all under awareness. But now you're going to start acting, right? So that writing what the truth is, speaking it over yourself. I like to use voice notes. Voice notes for me, I can just hear it. To me, it's like hearing my future self talking back to me. You are this, you are lovable, you are, emotionally intelligent, whatever you need to say. And it's not just fluff, be specific.
Gerardo said, tell yourself the truth. Exactly.
Absolutely. Replace it with the truth. So that's going to be the way that you're talking, right? And then now you're going to start being more assertive so you can set boundaries, because that is going to be the key. You're going to start being more assertive so you can set boundaries. When you're being more assertive, right? You're hearing yourself, I have these great ideas. I need to, when somebody interjects you while you're in a meeting, you need to speak up. If you feel like your feelings aren't, you feel a certain way when somebody makes a joke and at your expense, and you don't feel like it's funny, you may not have the capacity to say it right now because you're all emotionally involved. It's just too much. But you let them know, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing at this and this time. You start practicing being more assertive.
I was just going to ask you too, how do you go from zero assertiveness or non-existent boundaries to really starting to have that conversation? Because we all know that we should do that and practice that. But for somebody who already has trouble saying no, or somebody who struggles with, feeling like their voice matters, how do you go from that to, what we're not going to do? In a nicer way at work, of course. But how do you do that?
So it's important to know, if you got to know what your limits are. You got to know, what are you going to take? What are you not going to take? Where's the cutoff? Okay. And you have to start small. If you've ran away from confrontation, let me bring you to this thing that I was reading before I forget. So, they talk in psychology, they talk about schemas, and it's pretty much a schema is something that's triggered without somebody really being aware of what's happening on the other side, right? So, for example, if your supervisor looks like they have a squirmy face and they're working their way towards you, all of a sudden you're like, oh, something's wrong. I'm about to get fired. Granted, just in the morning meeting, they just praised you for whatever you just did, but now you think you're about to be fired. You're getting all nervous, right? And I think about those feelings that we create in our mind when we want to set boundaries. Oh, they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose their. I'm just afraid that this is gonna happen or this is gonna happen, but you don't know. So start small. Maybe you need to practice in the mirror with that particular person. Maybe you need to start just uttering it often. I will come back to this conversation when you stop yelling at me. Or I like to use a restaurant. Okay, that's my favorite example.
I practice that, by the way. I want you to know.
The restaurant is, to me, the people pleasing industry. They want to make sure that most of them, I'm not going to speak for all of them, most of them, right? They want to make sure that you get what you need. And so I say you practice at the restaurant. If something, right, let's say you're just doing a takeout order or whatever, or whatever the case, a delivery, it doesn't matter. You open up the food and it doesn't look like what you ordered. You paid for your $30 steak and it looks like a, $17 steak. And old people pleasing way, oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to, I don't want them to be mad at me or uncomfortable. You need to speak up because you paid that money. If it was a delivery, call them up. If you picked it up at curbside or take it, whatever, let them, hi, I feel, right? I want to always start with I feel versus you. I feel like the steak I ordered is not what was delivered to me. Is there any way that we can we change the order, or is there any way that I can get a new order? Because this doesn't look this, whatever. Because you're now speaking up for yourself. If it's at work, which once you start practicing, you're going to get to that point where it's at work. Something small. The person in the cubicle next to you, let's say you physically go, they play their music too loud. Hey,
that's a good one.
putting your music down, or they're radio, especially the older ones. The older ones, they don't care nothing about it. They do whatever they want. They've been here for 17,000 years, so they can care less about what you.
Our more tenured employees,
right? So, hey, do you mind turning down your music? It's just a little distracting, or whatever the case. Nice. Nothing. It doesn't have to be crazy. And then you have to understand that this thing is going to take practice. So again, start small. The restaurants, practicing in the mirror while you're driving to work or before a Zoom meeting. Maybe someone's going to interject you. Like just practice.
Yeah.
Say what you feel and start with the I feel. And then when you start practicing, you're going to start taking more action. And you're probably going to have to set firmer boundaries, stronger boundaries, more specific boundaries. Because one, you have to understand that people may not understand you. They may say, well, I didn't intend to do this. I don't really see it your way. But if they respect you, they say, well, I won't do that in front of you, or I won't do that. Maybe they do understand. They say, I see what you're saying. I'll make sure that I don't do that again.
I'm sorry I made you feel that way. Yeah.
That way. And then there's going to be that person that you always assume everybody is if you're people pleasing. How dare you think, hold up now, like, all the extra, and they're upset that you have the boundary. If they're trying to take advantage of you, they're like, why in the world would you just take away my power like that? Right?
Listen, remember I was talking about that? The only people that are bothered or upset when you set boundaries are the ones who benefit from you having none.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's the one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want you to understand that you're not responsible for the other people's reactions to your boundaries, because we're going to get out of that people pleasing and putting ourselves last and start putting ourselves first. It is not selfish. You are literally losing your peace over these things over and over again. Stress, losing your hair, gaining weight, overeating. So many things. And how does it affect your finances? How does it affect your relationships with your kids, a partner, whatever? Like all these things are being affected in the background. Yep. And all you have to do is say this. That's it.
And I even try to when I was struggling with it, I would write it out. I was known for writing out what I wanted to say because that helped me stay organized in my mind. And then it helped me kind of get straight to the point because y'all know I can talk, talk. And so really being able to, what it comes down to is find what works for you and practicing these things. It's okay that you go from 0 to 0.5 up to 1, maybe to 1.5, and to keep going. I mean, it's a process, and the more comfortable you get, the more confident you'll be able to do it. And all of these things really do impact, your overall capacity. Because if you are emotionally drained because, you don't have any boundaries and you can't say no at work, or you feel like you have to do everything, that is going to show up in your relationships. And I know for me, my children, my spouse was like, so you just gonna work late every night? Like, we had dinner plans. Like, what? I know work needs you, but we need you too. And really being able to just get comfortable getting uncomfortable. And I know we talk about that all the time. And I want to say what Vernica said. I love it. She said, let go of values that are destructive to yourself and others. Ma'am, that is so on point because oftentimes it's those values of, you know, I should be this kind of a mom because somebody else told you that. Or it's the value of really feeling like you need to be needed as well. So checking those values, having that awareness, and helping you to really understand how that's impacting you across all these different areas of your life. So I love it.
Yes.
Okay, so we've been on for about 40 minutes. I want to see if there are any additional questions. I will not jump off immediately like I normally do. I'm getting better, y'all, okay? Because I normally am like, do you have questions? Okay, done, bye. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask any questions. Sam, I'm so grateful for you coming on and talking about this because it's something that I feel often flies under the radar, right? We know that we're nice. We know that we're kind. We know that we like to give. We're helpful, empathetic. And as women, we take that on frequently. But there is a line between being nice, being kind, being selfless, as you said, and people pleasing. And the only way to really get to that is to understand the motive. And do you really have capacity for it? So asking yourself, why are you doing this is going to help a ton. So tell everybody where they can find you, what you have going on, because I know there are going to be people that are reaching out to you that need some help with people pleasing.
Absolutely. So you can find me on mendofitness.com/hey. That's a great place to start. Um, I'm also on at Samantha Washington on TikTok, Samantha Washington. I'm on Twitter, same Samantha Washington. And also, I have a Facebook group called Men to Fitness. I'm going to change the name, I think. We'll see. But it's Men to Fitness on Facebook. I'm serious. And we pretty much create a safe place for women who feel like they don't have a voice. They don't know where to go. They probably, if you have been in a narcissistic relationship, whether with a boss and you just feel isolated, you don't know who to talk to, you feel alone, you feel like nobody understands you, especially if you're dealing with a covert narcissist, which there's so many types of narcissists, but covert narcissists, they fly under the radar. So no one on the outside can tell, but you on the inside can tell. And it's really frustrating. So if you're experiencing that type of, these type of relationships and you don't know where to go and you need, support, because I'm not the only one that has all the answers. There's so many other people that have different ideas and it's good to come together and you need that community. Join us on Mended Fitness on Facebook. It's MENDED Fitness, FITNESS. And then also if you're in there, you're going to hear the announcement coming up soon. I have a guilt trip workshop that's going to help you overcome the guilt trips that narcissists tend to put on you. You got to, first of all, you want to be aware of what that looks like. You'll be aware of how they use it and why you're feeling this way. And then also understand that there's going to be people that they send out, enablers or flying monkeys, people who pretty much do the work for the narcissist that you might be dealing with. So if it's in a workplace environment, you're thinking, who are the employees that are like the minions for your boss that's always looking at your work or seeing what you're doing and just going to go tell and, so.
I had to come off mute. Listen. Especially at work. I know you have more work on your desk. You got something better to do than to check to see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm done.
Yes. So, and so many other things, just, when you have to, cut that off and, with work, it's harder, but, creating boundaries and learning how to just know that when another guilt trip's they're about to send you on another guilt trip, you got your tickets all printed out, boarding pass ready to go, you know how to cancel it. Cause you got to be ready. You got to be ready to cancel that. Okay. We don't need to.
And I want to talk about this for a second. It comes up for me because I recently went on a trip for the first time with my husband for a week by ourselves, right? And it kind of goes off the question that Vernica asked about how does it affect your kids? And I feel like part of me created some monsters in our house because we taught them how to treat us, right? That you learn narcissistic behavior not only from people who are, you know, practicing that or from people pleasers, but then you can also not even really realizing it teach your children how to people please and to expect that as well, right? I'm not even gonna lie. I remember maybe about a year ago, I started Googling, like, is my 17-year-old a narcissist? Because what in the, and she's not. I love her to death, but you know, it's the spoiledness. So, can you talk a little bit about how does people pleasing impact your kids? And then I'm gonna let y'all get out of here.
Yes, that's a great question. That's a great point, Nicole. And was it Vernica? So when you are people pleasing and you're allowing your kids to, everything they ask you, you say yes, right? You have no boundaries. They pretty much can walk all over you and they become really demanding to the point where you don't recognize them. And which is hard because then they start having these type of, it's not just the relationship they have with you, it's going to be, they're going to see like what they're having. Yep. I don't even know why you on mute, Nicole. You just cut me right off. Like,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
That's why I'm on mute so you can talk.
Listen, I started putting it on mute when I realized what you was doing. I was like, but yeah, like they start now doing this stuff outside and looking, just like, I know I didn't raise no child to be acting like this. And it's not healthy for your child because all you're doing is you're not allowing them to even have boundaries for themselves. They just think that the world serves them. Whatever they say goes. So what do they look like as they become adults? Entitled.
Can't get along with nobody at work.
Can't get along with anyone at work. Always seeking for, like it's me or nothing. It's what I need or nothing. And it becomes problematic because now they can't even have authentic relationships with people because they're too busy to get what they want. Because all they've known is getting what they want. And it always works when they do this. So they also can become really manipulative. Even at a young age, they figure out ways how to ask certain questions a certain way to get what they need, or know when to ask the questions,
Or
right?
what faces to
Or what
make, what body language.
or what you want.
Yeah.
When you're on the phone, you can always give them what
Yeah, yeah, go whatever. Those things, yeah.
and
Or
so
you teach them too how to be people pleasers in relationships in addition to, you know, becoming or appearing that they're entitled. So talk about that a little bit.
yeah, so for example, my daughter, she would literally allow other kids to treat her a certain way because she thought she deserved it.
Yes. Oh,
Because it's like you're modeling like what you're like our kids pay attention, right? If I am always like if I let's say I'm uttering something in the car like I don't even want to do this or I don't know why and they're hearing that and you're complaining about somebody and then we go to that person's house or we go talk to that person like they're like, oh, it's okay to have these type of relationships where you don't like somebody or you don't want to be around somebody and but you still go or you still around them because it's okay to not be comfortable with how you feel or it's okay to be uncomfortable with around people. It's okay to like you should always, it doesn't matter what you feel, your feelings don't matter pretty much,
exactly.
your feelings don't matter. So for me, when I saw my daughter, she would tell me, she would come out of the school crying sometimes. She's like, so and so made me mad. She's like, I got to figure out what to get for her birthday though. I'm like,
Ma'am.
but all what they notice is things that you
That
know
we do.
that we do. If if she knows that I've allowed myself to be, like I'm upset with somebody or somebody hurt me, and she probably overheard a conversation. The next thing you know, that person is at my house and we're keying, then that means, I'm okay with it. And or the crying and super sensitive.
Yeah. That's
Big,
a good one, Chanel.
that is a big one. if you speak up or if you're hurt by something, it's not, you shouldn't say anything about it. If you're if you if they make a joke about you, you shouldn't feel sad. Now you're being too sensitive. Or
Mm.
crying, you're weak. Why are you crying? When I was younger, I used to cry a lot. Why are you crying? What's wrong with you? If this is the way that I expel my like let my feelings out, can I let
This
them
is
out?
how I emote. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry that this doesn't work for you, but this is how I emote. Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with these things. Everybody has a different way. So you would rather me yell at you? You would rather me throw things because it seems like I'm stronger? Absolutely not.
Yeah. That's not how stuff works. That's such a good answer. Like,
We need to be aware of people around us and how people are different. And it's okay if somebody's crying. Doesn't mean they're weak. They're very much aware of their feelings and they're letting it out in the best way
yep.
they know. And being there's no such thing as being too sensitive. You're only too sensitive to someone who has no sensitivity. That's it.
And that's a mic drop. Like, literally. How often do we hear that, right? Do we? I know I heard it a lot growing up because I'm a crybaby. I cry because I'm happy. I cry because I'm mad. I cry because I'm thankful. Like all of those different things. And learning how to, number one, sit with those emotions and be okay with crying. But when you constantly hear, what are you crying for, right? Or I'll give you something to cry about, those sort of things, we can teach our kids and embed in them early on that, number one, like you said, it's okay to cry. We can also teach them that it's okay to feel how you feel, even if you're upset, right? And that if you don't like somebody, I'm not going to force you to like them. That doesn't mean you have to go back and play with them. And I've
Yeah.
seen this on both perspectives with my high school senior and now my kindergartner. Yeah, it's a big gap, I know, but it's, same thing in a different way and helping them to understand the dynamics of relationships and friendships. You
Yes.
don't have to be friends with people who make you feel bad. And
Yes.
if they make you feel bad, tell them that, right? You can't assume people know these things. And so I love that question. And I'm so grateful that you answered it in the way that you did, because I feel like before we go out into the world and help everybody else, we have a duty and an obligation to help our children, right? And help them to understand that it's okay to be able to feel what they feel and to teach them the opposite of people pleasing, to practice self care in a variety of different ways, even if that means, hey, I don't like pickles. All right, you don't like pickles, take the pickles off, right? It's okay to have a voice. So,
Yeah. And that's how you
yeah.
great you'll have less people taking advantage of you. You won't have to deal with the mundane stuff, dealing with all the anxiety and the stress, and it won't rub off on your kids because when you're doing all that, right, you don't have the capacity to even focus on, like, when kids ask you for something, your kid asks you for something small, you're so stressed about the thing at work that you're like, you know what I mean, creating that
Yep.
anxiety, all that. But you'll create more authentic relationships where you don't have to worry about that. You don't have
Yep.
to worry, people always just taking advantage of you, or where you always have to, because you're going to have people that are going to remind you, have you taken care of yourself? Before you say yes, did you? You'll have people that are actually concerned about you. Yes. Okay. You'll have people that are concerned more about you. It would be 100, 100. You guys are giving, equal give, equal take.
It's a giver and a giver versus a giver and a taker.
Yes. And you're
Yeah.
not concerned. It's you don't have to fake the funk. They know you, you know them, and you can create those healthy boundaries without ever having to feel how they're going to respond. You'll be able to breathe that sigh of um, relief.
Relief. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. It's a
you'll have
sigh of relief.
more peace. I promise you.
Because it'll be quality people, right? Who aren't going to be offended by your boundaries,
Yes.
who are going to actually kind of call you out and say, sis, you're people pleasing, right? Like, did you do what you needed to do
Right.
today before you said yes to that? And
Yes.
so I love it. I'm so glad that you have been on and talking. And if you have not gone and followed Samantha on here on Facebook or checked out her Facebook group or on Instagram, go do that. Check out our podcast episode from what, 3, 4 weeks ago? It was about
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks ago. Um, and if you have questions once this ends, or if you're watching the replay, make sure you reach out to either one of us. So grateful for all the information that you shared and all the interaction that we've had tonight. Listen, have a good weekend, and thank you for teaching us how to stop people pleasing, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys were phenomenal.
See ya.
Bye.